previous application, we had this this app that had some different routes, and on each route, it was just printing out a string that says hello. But realistically, we want to render an HTML file here, right? We don't just want to have words on our page. We want to be able to put HTML on there. So let's take a look at how we can make that happen. So what we're going to do is in our application, we are going to create a templates directory, right? That's the T in the MTV framework. So inside of our app, again, not in the project level, but in the app level, the one that has the models and the views and those files, we're going to create a new folder called templates. It's very important that you name this exactly, right? It can't be template singular or template capitalized or templates or any typo that you make there, because Django is going to automatically look for this folder. So it must be named exactly. Inside that folder, I'm going to put all of my HTML files. So let's make one called index.html. And in this index.html, let's go ahead and create an h1 tag that says hello world. In my views, what I can do now is I can, rather than returning this HTTP response, I can return a render for that template. I'm going to return render. When I render, I always must pass the first parameter as the request. Again, this is just something that you have to do in Django. And then after that, I give it the name of the HTML file. So I called mine index.html, so that's what I'm going to pass it there. And if my application happens to still be running, so I'm always going to go check for this output to make sure it is. And then I'm going to go to localhost 8000 and I see hello world. Great. I can see that this H1 is a little bigger than it was before, because if I go to my other route, Hello Navia, that's going to be that smaller text, right? So I know it's an H1 tag. Great. So that's good. But what if I want to actually pass variables from my Python to my HTML, the way that we used to do with Jinja? Well, I can still do that in Django. It's going to look a little bit different. So let's create a route that's actually going to pass a variable from the HTML, or from the Python to the HTML. And let's go ahead and pass this name variable into HTML. So I'm going to create a new HTML file, and I'll call it hello name.html. Again, this is inside my templates directory. And in this HTML file, I'm going to create an h1 tag that says hello. And then in that curly brace syntax that we were using with Jinja, I'm going to say I'm going to receive a variable called HTML name. Now, one thing to note here, this looks a lot like Jinja. It's not Jinja though. It's Django's own templating language. The syntax is identical in almost every way. So you can pretty much do all of the things that you were doing with Jinja. The only reason I note that is because the documentation, if you're looking for it, is going to be different. So look for Django templates rather than Jinja. Okay, so now how do I get this variable from here to the HTML? Well, the way Django does this is it uses something called a context dictionary. And what that means is that there's going to be a dictionary that holds all variables that are going to be used in the HTML. So any keys that you define in this dictionary are going to be the variable names that you will have available in your HTML. So traditionally, this dictionary is called context. You can name it whatever you want, but context is, again, a naming convention. So in here, let's go ahead and, again, in my HTML, I called this HTML name. So I must use that same name for the key. So again, I used HTML name here. So I'm going to use HTML name for the key here. And then its value is going to be that route variable name. So in order to now render this template, I'm going to return a render. I always pass the request. The template name goes next. And then lastly, I'm going to pass this context dictionary. So again, double check that my server is still running. And now if I go to /Alice, I'm going to see hello Alice. Bob. And again, this is now in an H1 tag, as you can see. So that variable is getting passed all the way from the route into this context dictionary through to the HTML and then just being displayed in the Django template. I can pass as many variables as I want this way. So if I actually create another variable, let's call this one name list, and let's create a list of names. So let's say I wanted to say hello to every name in this list. Well, what I can do is in my Django template, I'll leave this header alone just so we can see that we can have multiple things. Let's actually iterate through that list. So I'm going to create a for loop. For name in name list. Again, name list is that key in the context dictionary. Name is just a temporary variable to say for each name in that list. And then let's go ahead and create a p tag in which we display the name. So again, this is my iterator, right? For each name in that list of names that's coming from the Python, we're just going to display it. Actually, I said we were going to say hello to it, right? So let's say hello name. Okay, and then I'm going to end my for loop. And now if I go refresh this page, we're going to see hello to each of the names in that list, right? So we can iterate through something that comes from the HTML too. Again, my other variable is still there, my HTML name, and then I'm now iterating through my name list. This syntax is identical to what it was in Jinja, just showing you again. But again, the documentation, if you're going to look for it, is Django templates.